come and learn the same values I've learned. Honesty, compassion,
being a dick. When I was a young teenager, I used to climb buildings, scrap with my pals, pretending we were in Tekken. After that, we'd head over to someone's house and watch either Karate Kid or Fright Night. I'm not even remotely joking here. I think I've watched the original LaRusso trilogy over 100 times. And that became a thing until I discovered 2 liter bottles of cider and the fairer sex. So you can imagine how over the moon I was to see that Cobra Kai was a thing. Now, with all the franchises that have been driven into the dirt with remakes, between this and Top Gun are the two that are on the top of my head to think of a franchise that haven't gone through the giant blender that is modernity or whatever you want to call it. Cobra Kai, especially in its early days, broke a lot of new ground, showed the story from the villain's point of view, and it went through all the characters and basically showed everything from new perspectives, and also showed that the 80s cheese and the old school toxic masculinity can be the best thing for a lot of people these days. And maybe some of the things that happened in the past aren't all that bad. It tells a story of a ton of geeky kids that never really catch a break, that find a way to save themselves and pull themselves out of their problems by just becoming more competent, becoming tougher, and understanding that they only become victims if they choose to be. This is all very well and good, but genuinely, how do you keep this running for 6 seasons long, making it feel fresh? Hell if I know. I mean, I probably would have checked out and ran my nostalgia card into absolute oblivion by about season 3. But somehow the writers, showrunners, whatever you want to call them, have managed to keep this going for as long as they have. Until the final season. Now, there is a bit of a drop in quality in this, and it's not all bad. I'm going to be completely honest, but there are a few factors in this that make me go, eh? Now, it's not huge problems, but mainly because the rest of the season has got such a high quality, I just feel like these need to be addressed. Then I'm going to talk about the amazing stuff that I didn't fully realize until I viewed it the second time around. Cobra Kai takes everything the Karate Kid did well and turned it up to 11. Martial arts and karate treachery, check. 80s cheese, check. Extremely deep character development holding up in a truly vast ensemble. Yeah, check. This truly is the Game of Thrones of martial arts franchises. Now, the latest season as well has got a unique flavour, which I like to refer to as Afterlife. Now, this is after I could argue that the main events of the story have finished, and you're then calming everything down and then slowly ramping it back up. If you imagine as by the end of the previous season, it was brought to an absolute boil, and now, after everything that happened with Terry Silver and with all the teenagers, it's now brought right back down to a simmer. And if you want a further example of what I mean by what feels like the main story ending, is Walking Dead season 2. After season 1, they go to the CDC. They meet that Dr. Jenner, I think his name is, and he basically describes everything that's happening, and it feels like the story could end right there. Because I mean, how are you going to go further than the CDC? Anyway, season 2 then slowly ramps it back up with the farm and everything else. If you want another example, we can describe Red Dead Redemption 2 and the epilogue after the main story's finished. You then go into the epilogue and it feels like the story's slowly beginning to ramp up again. I think within season 6 it does this really well. Because after the massive events, Terry's gone, everything seems like it's going well again. The only thing I could really imagine that would be something you could probably look into happening would be John Kreese getting out of prison. But, I mean, you've got to be pretty talented to build from that and that alone. But season 6 does this well. We have all the dramas present and correct, but without waking sleeping dogs. It explores new avenues. And this is all under the massive looming shadow, which is the Sakai Taikai tournament, or something I'd never heard of before. And then it adds little bits of tidbits of lore about Mr. Miyagi, and some of his history may not be as squeaky clean as you first imagined it was. So from the writing at the beginning of season 6, there was a lot of intrigue, and I massively got a lot of time for that. So I didn't mention this earlier, but me and my best mate did have tons of arguments about the end of season 5. I said, "Yep, that's it done. You can't possibly go any further." He massively disagreed. Some days it's good to be proven wrong. The first part of this negative is the whole reason why I wanted to make this video, and that is Dimitri's arc in the beginning of this season. It's just feels really weird, is because Dimitri's always been kind of the kind of funny comic relief character, and then slowly starts to build up to be, more of the warrior, showing that you can't rely on other people to fight your battles for you, or just because you're a massive geek and you've been bullied doesn't mean that you can't use strength the right way. But as the season starts, Dimitri's hiding the fact that he's going to MIT, and then he never shuts the fuck up about MIT. He may as well change his name to fucking DMIT tree. Really not proud of that. But anyway, that seems to be a bit of a bone of contention between him and his best mate Hawk. That and a lot of other things. But as the fact is now that Dimitri's a bit of an elitist and he doesn't want to do karate anymore because it's going to injure him. Then enter his girlfriend Jasmine. Now, Jasmine likes the fact that Dimitri does all the winning and likes the fact that Dimitri comes out on top. So that immediately puts his dick in the driver's seat, and everything else he was going to be doing is now taking second fiddle. So all the stuff that happens with Dimitri can lead back to this point. And I'm going to lay quite a bit of this out, and then I'm going to come to my final point, right? So we've established that Dimitri doesn't give that much of a fuck about karate as much as he used to, because he's going to MIT and he's going to get some crazy engineering mental degree job, right? Sound. Speaks to his girlfriend. Now he wants to perform the Sakai Taikai. So he goes to the qualifier, whatever it is, Creek, does the thing with Mike Barnes, ends up passing, is one of the last two to get to the flag. It's between him and Hawk. He gets Hawk in that position that reflects where Hawk had him a few seasons prior, and he makes the mistake of not taking Hawk to the deck before, and Hawk is able to do some fucking mental front flip and gets out of it, and absolutely just smashes Dimitri into the deck. Hawk then feels sorry for his mate, tries to help him out, and Dimitri lands a cheap shot, runs away with the flag, and keeps a secret that he only won by a dirty mean. And Hawk kind of keeps up with that, and the pair of them are kind of at loggerheads through it. And what happens next is really quite strange. You get into Barca, Dimitri's high on wanting to be a winner because his bird wanted him to. Then he immediately gets smacked out of every competition he gets into. Then, when they're going out and hitting the town hard, Hawk says he doesn't want to get with a girl because he has a girlfriend. Dimitri's like, "Yeah, all right, I'll do it." And then, taking the first chance he gets, he's dancing with another girl, potentially wanting to take her back to his hotel room. Okay, now we see all that. So what's the reason why Dimitri's been acting like a bit of a dickhead recently? You could argue one of the root causes was his bird Jasmine saying that she only wants to get with winners. Now, what's the first thing he does as soon as he gets a bit of taste of freedom from the tournament? Yeah, he tries to cheat on his bird. Now, you could tell me, he was just fucking dancing with her. I'd be like, yeah, but what was he trying to do? He was 100% going to cheat on her. If that girl had given him the chance, he 100% would have taken her back. So this is the thing with Dimitri is he does all this pish. He fucking cheap shots Hawk, treats everyone around him like shit, becomes an elitist prick, and then is talking all about this winner stuff, all because of his bird and because of the thing he wants to get. Then what's the first thing he does when he gets away from his missus? He tries to cheat on her. Yeah, so his loyalty's pretty shite in it, right? Then Kenny Payne rocks up after Devin comes clean about what goes down, and Carmen has some complications with her birth, so Johnny and Miguel hop on a flight and bang out some local rich dickhead. And when Kenny gets there, what's the first thing Dimitri does with him? Doesn't trust him. To be fair, Hawk doesn't trust him either, but that immediately shows like massive dissent within the team, which leads to one of their losses. I know Robbie was saying it was his fault, but it 100% was not. It was partially, actually, tell a lie, not 100. It was partially Robbie's fault because he should have been raring to go. He is the team captain, and it is a competition. If you're stood by the edge of that ring, you should be good to go. But Dimitri is the first one that sows seeds of discontent against Kenny, even though in Kenny's own words, he flew hundreds of miles, thousands of miles, whatever, to get to Barca to compete with these guys after he just wanted to be left alone at the start of the season. Then we get the scene where they're all in the locker and Dimitri kind of apologizes and kisses and makes up with Hawk, and that's it. And then they compete again and the Binary Bros are back. I hated that. Like, I get they're going to have to make up in some way and you've got to wrap up the season, but if you're going to build up Dimitri to be a bit of a minor or major antagonist, you may as well go whole hog with it. And he was just becoming just a bit of a hated character, and then you're supposed to forget everything he's just done. I know Hawk did similar stuff, but Hawk stepped in for Dimitri when the chips were down, when he absolutely didn't have to, and could have carried on just being a huge dick. And I might be alone in thinking this, but I just didn't really like that resolution. It just seemed like too swept under the rug. And during that entire time, it didn't really seem like Hawk was really holding him accountable for cheap shotting him after the two of them were meant to be pals again. Now, I know there was quite a bit of history between these two, and Hawk did bully Dimitri and he broke his arm. I'm just saying this is now after that stage. I feel like Hawk might have paid his penance. Like if you say you forgive someone for something, you can't then turn around and smash him with a rock just because you're still a bit mad. You either forgive him or you don't. Anyway, I've ranted enough on that piece. Next up, we have the literal ball of chaos that is chosen. This hard drinking, egg breaking, limb disabling, Terry Silver battering madman has risen to be one of the greatest additions to this show. I love the fact that this guy can go from drinking and making an absolute menace of himself to talking about storage wars and TV shows that your wife watch. Is who cares about grammar? Chosen has had a really good arc this season as well. The fact that he's able to get over his love and Komako and ends up finding a new one within Daeon. I really love this arc, and I'm going to jump in about Daeon as well because I think she is one of the coolest speeches with Tori when Tori's asking her about is everything worth it and all the sacrifices, and she looks her dead in the eyes after holding back tears and goes, "Absolutely." I think that's awesome. And the fact that these two end up together is even better. I think they're truly like each other's, not foils, but like a yin yang. And it's great they found each other. I just think that's brilliant. Good little ending there. So that's another great one. Terry Silver is also the greatest character in this show by a country mile. Him and Kreese having a final showdown, I think, was quite fitting between the two of them, considering that they started out as best mates. They were both absolutely toxic for each other. All hell broke loose, and then the two of them took each other out in a comically 80s way. If you hate this way that they both got taken out, that's totally fine. I wasn't a huge fan of it either, but at least it kind of cemented they won't be coming back full stop. The downside of that was no one gave a shit after two major villains were taken out in one fell swoop. You think Johnny would have something to say about his father figure turned enemy, turned father figure again, turned enemy. You think he might have had something to say about that guy, considering that without Kreese, he wouldn't be a fraction of the man he is today. Same with Danny. You think he would say that his greatest tormentor, which is Terry Silver's finally gone. There's no mention of that whatsoever. No funeral, no bugger all. It's almost as if that even though Terry had an entire life before the events of Cobra Kai and in between Karate Kid, that no one, not no one, would even host a funeral for this guy. That there's no mention. One of the biggest pillars in Cobra Kai is now gone. Sorry, two is now gone. And you can tell me that him coming back was contrived about his charges getting dropped and everything else for all the attempted murder he tried, but I can say without a shadow of a doubt that I know I'm not the only one that didn't fucking burst out laughing when they seen Terry Silver in that hot tub. And I know for a fact that guy was definitely not wearing shorts underneath there, and it came down to his goddamn kneecaps, right? That being said, I love Terry Silver, and it's a shame that the character's died, but the bigger shame is the fact that no one gave a fuck. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say as well, when John Kreese died alongside of him, I thought there'd be some kind of at least, you know, memory of them in some way. Like, for example, in the Cobra Kai gym, there would at least be a picture of John Kreese somewhere, you know, his Vietnam photo or anything like that, considering that's Johnny's father figure. But I would also go out on a limb and say Terry should have been there as well. I know, call me nuts. He was an absolute pillar of Cobra Kai, and he did have an absolute history before and after. He did also teach the young lads how to be more ferocious and everything else. And his motivational speech in season 5 is probably one of the best you'll hear out this season series. So yeah, I'm annoyed by that. Terry Silver deserved better as a character to at least have some kind of resolution about his character after it. But as the show says, closure is good, means the outcome doesn't matter. This is the second time I'm doing this recording for the Iron Dragons because the first time I couldn't stop yawning. It isn't because I was bored doing it, it's because it was past midnight and I normally wake up at 5:30 to start work. So, anyhow, the Iron Dragons were a great addition. The only downside was that their power scaling was all over the place and they got beaten basically by the power of friendship. And here's what I want to say about him. So, first of all, you meet Zara. She's talking about how all the boys are cute there, and it's kind of obvious that she's going to become a bit of a standout character. Then you see the Iron Dragons against Cobra Kai, and they absolutely clean house. Not one of them is taking a hit, and then three of them decide to bow out and just leave the two captains. And at this point, you think, okay, well, Cobra Kai have got no chance, and it's absolutely true. Iron Dragons just wipe the mats with them. Then you see Axel's this absolute nearly 7 foot tall machine that constantly works. He gets whipped if he makes mistakes. And Zara is also trains really hard and has this amazing social media where she's just an absolute queen. Everyone loves her and she's got this huge, massive following. And then she even ends up taking Robbie and, well, giving her a bit of the Iron Dragon. I don't know, there's got to be a joke there. I'm just bloody terrible. She sleeps with Robbie, right? Okay, so do it that way you will. I'm sure there's a clever pun in there. And that also gives more fuel to Tori. She's also angry about that, even though she's the one that decided to put a pause on their relationship. But anyone that has any kind of functioning brain, if you want to put some kind of stopper on a relationship, it means breakup. So if somebody else moves on, then that's your own fault. It's kind of like asking for an open relationship and complaining when your partner actually sleeps with somebody else. But I don't want to get sidetracked here. So we've already established that Wolf, Zara, and Axel are all pretty nails. Like they pretty much dedicate their entire life to training in their and or their image. So the fact that our guys have been able to not only defeat one of them, but all three of them when it comes to the final fight, I didn't like that 1%. And here's why. Because it's that old trope where you can have the hero who's trained for say maybe 6 months or whatever it is, beat the villain who's a lifetime student and should absolutely win. Now, just because there are heroes doesn't mean that they should win every fight. And I don't know if you've seen the latest Rocky movie, not Creed, but the latest Rocky movie is he takes on the current heavyweight champion in an exhibition match and goes the distance and makes part of it competitive. I think that would have been a more fitting ending for Johnny because when you're first introduced to Wolf, aside from him being a cocky prick. It's obvious that he's, hiding some of his ability. And then when you actually see him in the cage when Terry Silver's recruiting him, you see this guy is an absolute demon. And that would be probably one of the worst things to see on the other side of a cage is someone like Sensei Wolf. Now imagine as well, you're Johnny Lawrence. Johnny Lawrence is pushing 50. He is a karate badass, yes. He is in really good shape for his age and he's got really high battle IQ. But is he beating Wolf? No, not in a million years. I know it happened in the series, but maybe I'm in the minority here again, but it didn't feel very earned. Now, what I think would have been a better culmination of Johnny's story wouldn't be beating Wolf, but it would be making it extremely competitive. And now, fighting's a very intimate sport, and I can tell you that every single time that your opponent's starting to gain momentum, you can see it in their face. Every time that you've scared them, you can see it. I can tell you that you actually can see fear in your opponent's eyes at certain points. Now, I know that may sound a bit weird for me to admit that, but genuinely, fighting is very intimate. And it would be good if you could see slight bits of fear and a bit of apprehension in Wolf after Johnny starts pulling it back out the bag. Not necessarily beat the guy, but making it competitive would be better. Now, next, I'm going to move on to Axel. Axel's been built up to be kind of like the Terminator in the way that he doesn't really feel real emotions and has dedicated his entire life to training. He even gets hit if he makes mistakes within training, and as a result, is molded into an absolute monster. Now, this does have real world applications. So, Dricus du Plessis, who's, if I'm not mistaken, was a middleweight champion in the UFC and still is by the time I made this video, his trainer would use a kind of bastonada thing where he'd hit their feet if they made mistakes in training. And this obviously does have an effect. It makes you not make that mistake again, whether barbaric it is or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, Axel is at an incredibly high level and he is basically just an impossible obstacle to beat. And they proved this using the crazy software that Dimitri and Hawk were able to pull together. I don't know why they needed Miguel to be there as well, as if he was also connected and knew exactly what Axel would do at the same time as Robbie was seeing it in VR, but whatever, there you go. And that software proved that Robbie only had a 4% chance of getting anywhere near beating Axel, which, I'm not being funny, it's not a 0% chance, but you're probably not going to do that. So anyway, the day of the race comes when the two of them actually come together and fight, and Axel has to resort to using dirty tactics to get Robbie out of there. So the man that you had 4% chance of losing to, you have to use dirty tactics on. To me, that seems a bit insane. Also, them getting anywhere near Axel, I thought was crazy within itself. So Robbie gets injured, he gets thrown out of there. He's done, he's lost. Then Miguel moves in under Cobra Kai to take him out. I thought that was pretty cool, and grandma roots for him, and I was dead hyped to see Miguel, take on Axel. Now, once again, even if Miguel just made this competitive, that would have been a win in itself. I could have absolutely lived with Miguel losing, but giving something like a bloody nose to him or crippling him, I think that'd be really cool. But Axel, being the demon that he is, still beats Miguel, and we're all like, what the fuck? And you finally see that we've got a bad guy that wins in the end, but loses because all Axel really wants is Sam and the chance for a normal life, but he's still in the karate game forever. And Miguel, after building up and building up and building up, has found a ceiling that he still can't get past, but leaving him with the determination to fight Axel again. And I really love that. The perfect resolution for him. And I'm not a huge fan of. I like the idea that Miguel's still having that fire inside of him, knowing that he wants to take somebody else on. Uh, to me, that's pretty cool. But I like the character of Axel. I think he's a cool addition. But I just once again don't agree with Cobra Kai clean sweeping the Iron Dragons after all their build up. Now on to Zara. Zara is probably the only one I could say I could lean with. Maybe Tori getting the better of her because as anyone will tell you, married men have the strength of 10 men when it comes to their wives, and I'm assuming that might have been what Tori had as well when they went into the fight. So Tori might have just had the grief of her mother, the anger about Robbie, and the fact is that Tori has very much got a chip on her shoulder, could have smashed at her defenses, the same way that Zara is very much underestimating her and also has her social media turning on her. So that's something else that's playing on the back of her mind. And we haven't seen Zara being pressure tested that we know of. And that could have been what sways it because Zara was distracted and Robbie was really angry. Tori was incredibly angry. That one I could have rolled with, but once again, I still think beating Zara is a hell of a mountain, and the fact that Tori knocked her teeth out as well, that was, don't get me wrong, it was really, really cool. It was an absolute badass kick, and that's the only one I could probably roll with. If you had Zara getting beat, you're like, okay, this is how this is going to go. Bring on Axel. Axel destroys both Robbie and Miguel, and then Johnny gets in there, fights Wolf, and then makes it incredibly competitive. You know, maybe even partially hurts him, breaks his jaw, breaks his nose, knocks his teeth out, anything like that could go down, or blocks his best attack, something along those lines. But just having the clean sweep, I don't like that idea. For me, it doesn't work. Season 6 also sets up a lot of intrigue about one of the original characters, which is Mr. Miyagi. Now, Pat Morita is sadly no longer with us, and it's incredibly difficult to get someone who's in the condition that he is to star in something again. God, that was morbid. I'm keeping it in anyway. Um, so the only choice they have is to use either previous footage or use AI to recreate the character. Now, when you see young Miyagi, that guy is genuinely intimidating. I really love how he looks, how he moves, how blunt he is with Daniel in that dream sequence, and the fact that he tells Daniel that he's too weak to accept the truth. I love that because Daniel then starts having second thoughts on him because the amount he idolized him was as this kind of perfect human being that wouldn't ever put a toe wrong and was always about honor. And later you find out through Terry that Mr. Miyagi had killed a man within the Sakai Taikai. Now, I know things would have marched on quite a bit from then, but as now the Sakai Taikai, they go through with teams instead of individuals. And it was also previously said that it was a different time back then, so the rules would have been different. Now, I can say as a 32-year-old man now that times have changed a lot since I was growing up, especially within the martial arts community. Everything has massively changed. I remember the early days of the UFC coming through, and I remember how you used to train in the old gyms, and concussions were just like kind of a badge of honor and a ordinary thing. Whereas nowadays it's a bit different. Anyway, the Miyagi dream sequence in the flashback, I do like that resolution. I think there's a lot of good callbacks as well because you have the Cobra Kai skeletons and the fact that Miyagi also is always filled with great sayings, and he says that you don't have to fight. And I know I'm paraphrasing there, and it's just a nice little resolution to it. And I like the idea that Miyagi may not have been whiter than white, and the only thing that I can think of in this to discredit Daniel um, would be to say, you know, the man served in World War II and was a Medal of Honor recipient. So there's a high chance that the man does have a body count. I just want to say that. But anyway, the Miyagi saga for Daniel, he also does go in a bit of a downward spiral until he has the resolution with the dream sequence. Like, for example, he doesn't want bonsai trees in his shop, he doesn't want them handed out and everything else. And I do like this change in Daniel. It kind of does show that he's deeply affected by it and everything else. And I know people weren't a big fan of the dream sequence. They thought it was mega weird, but I'm just gonna say, what show do you think you're watching? Like, Cobra Kai is pretty cheesy and it's pretty weird. I mean, generally watch season 5 and you see Mike Barnes, who's drunk as a skunk, kidnapping 3 people in a limo. There's also other stuff that goes on, but I mean, like, the show is it's pretty ridiculous. It's 80s cheese, and yeah, and you have Kreese and Silver blown up on a yacht. The only thing I dislike about that really is that no one's around to see it and no one mentions it. But anyway, I'm okay with the dream sequence. Just for a quick age breakdown as well, seeing as Grandmaster Kim brought up Turner. Captain Turner was born according to the wiki in 1912. That would also put him ripe at the age to serve in World War II, Korea War, and then in Vietnam. And also, according to the wiki, Grandmaster Kim is aged 104. That would put Turner at 7 years his senior, which is quite uncommon for a lot of martial arts masters to be younger than their students.
Unlikely, but okay. I can go with that.
I know, only God himself could fucking justify that reach. But hey ho, I did the research on it and I didn't want it to go to waste. Also, can we just say that Grandmaster Kim looks fantastic for 104? It's just a shame he's only got 26 more years of social security checks left to go. Also want to bring up a lot of the subtext that goes on, or a lot of the hidden details, and a lot of that does come through Tori. Now, Tori's had a hell of a character arc, going from really a nasty sadistic villain to, well, wherever she is now. Now, Tori, at her core, is really just a scared little girl who's absolutely full of rage. And this season kicks off with an absolute tragedy for her, because she comes in after hearing about her mum, who's supposed to be getting better, and she's lying on the floor, not moving. And the camera does some clever trickery and zooms in on a clenched fist. Now, obviously, this isn't by accident. Anyone who knows anything about cinema and TV and whatever knows that if a camera zooms in on something, it's for a reason. Everything in a TV show happens for a reason. So a lot of this foreshadows the fact that she's going to go back to her more violent ways, or that she's still going to be holding on to anger, or whatever else a million reasons for having a clenched fist can have. Now, Tori is an interesting character for me because it's very obvious in a lot of her small actions that she is still very afraid. Now, when Kreese is creasing about the place and catches her by surprise, even though he just comes to talk, Tori instinctively puts her keys into her fist. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen anyone get hit with keys, but it's pretty nasty. And that tells me that even though Tori is extremely capable of looking after herself, I mean, we've seen this woman tangle with everyone and come out on top. Like, she's fought grown men and been fine, and obviously other high level karate athletes. So, why does she need to use a weapon as well? Is it because she's particularly nasty? Maybe. She is notorious, after all. This is the same girl that initiated that giant school brawl, broke into Daniel LaRusso's house and went after his daughter, instigated Dimitri's arm being broken, even though it was Hawk that actually did it, and cut Hawk's hair with a straight razor. This was also the same girl that was somewhat redeemed in the season. The season prior, you seen her essentially being used as a puppet by Terry Silver and having an incredibly lenient judge or referee on her side. And that kind of disenfranchised her a little bit about Cobra Kai. And in this season, you see her, after being partially redeemed in Miyagi-Do, going straight back to Cobra Kai. I don't know how I feel much on Tori. I know that she's had an incredibly turbulent character arc, but I mean, am I glad she got a win in the end? To be honest with you, I kind of don't really know. Johnny's saga also comes to a neat little end. Even though I know a lot of people weren't a fan of Johnny crying to Kreese, saying threw him away like trash and saying it just felt weird. I'm also in that boat, by the way. I didn't really like that scene, but it's cool to see the two of them making up. It was also a brilliant addition having Johnny crying by his mother's grave in the past and talking about what a failure he was. and the fact that he has to go back and relive everything, or rather relive his moment of glory, which I quite like for him. It's also a good ending seeing Daniel Russo and Johnny finally getting their good endings. With Johnny getting the gym though, I still do think it was quite bizarre not having a single picture of Kreese. That's going to be a huge bone of contention for me moving forward, but hey ho, can't go back in time. As the story progresses with this, it's going to go into a story where Johnny Lawrence is highly unlikely to be involved, and we're going into the Jaden Smith universe of Karate Kid where they're studying Kung Fu, which, if you don't know anything about martial arts, it's a martial art from an entirely different country, which is China. And China and Japan historically haven't gotten on very well. Either way, it's still called the Karate Kid. And Daniel LaRusso is going to be teaching a student, along with Jackie Chan, Kung Fu and Karate. All right, cool. Suppose it's got to be a decent story. I wonder why it's being pushed within that Karate Kid universe and has nothing to do with the Hilary Swank one. I just wonder who the producer is. I might look that up one day. Now, as I'm wrapping up, we can talk theories and unanswered plot lines. So, first of all, we hear about some Master Serrano, and that never really gets touched upon again. The Cobra Kai Reddit was white hot on that for a short period of time, and then I stopped caring. We also are not going to find out about any parentage, particularly Tori. Not going to find out who her dad is. Her surrogate dad is Kreese. Her real dad is unknown. I honestly thought that was going to be Mike Barnes, but the two of them didn't know each other. We also have Johnny's parentage. We know who his mum is. We don't know who his dad is. I thought it was going to be set up to be Kreese, but once again, no. Especially because Kreese had a child with his girlfriend back home. Was told that his girlfriend plus the child died. So I was thinking that was leading up towards Johnny turning out to be a son, but it didn't work out. There was also a crazy theory I heard. Now, I'm going to debunk this, but also brace yourself because I thought this would have been amazingly hilarious. Uh, so, Kreese was supposed to have a child in this theory, and that child was none other than Amanda, which is Danny LaRusso's wife. And he sent her into that position to basically be a sleeper cell and get revenge on Daniel for everything he'd done to him. I think that's an absolutely insanely, amazingly chaotic theory. And I would have loved if it came true. If there wasn't such a film as Karate Kid 3, where Daniel Russo is hanging around with a red haired woman who he doesn't have any romantic interest in. And later in an episode, when Amanda is going on a bit of a road trip to meet with her cousin in Ohio, which is where this girl goes, it turns out that that's her cousin, and how the two of them met was the cousins still remain friends, which is the girl from Karate Kid 3, by the way, with Daniel LaRusso, and introduced cousin who was Amanda to him, and that's how they got together. There's also in this segment, you learn a bit more about Amanda and her baseball bat antics, and she was given the nickname Babe Ruthless. So, as gangster as that story is, it would be a huge retcon if you found out that Kreese walks in smoking a cigar and says, "Well done, sweetheart. You did a great job. Daddy's very proud of you." Something, something, winning a war. Now, I've said about all I want to say on this, and I have a feeling I'm going to do a couple more videos revisiting a few characters that I really, really do love. And I think Tori's on there just because she's such a mixed bag for me. Terry Silver's definitely going to be one, just because I think he's the best villain in cinema history for, well, a big standout, shall we say, right? Next, moving on, there's a lot of buzz around dinosaurs lately. Not Dominion, what's the other one? Rebirth is coming out. Primitive War looks awesome, and Chaos Theory and Camp Cretaceous have done really well, and I want to do a whole video on them. I might do that one next, or I might do Snow White and what's the other one? What's the other one I've been meaning to do? Do you know what? I'll leave that down. I'll make a poll about it, and if the 11 people that are subscribed to me want to vote in that, then by all means. Also, once again, seeing as I may forget, but I won't forget forever. I do remember all the people that are commenting. It does mean a lot. It does help drive engagement in my channel. If you want to see me grow, please comment on my videos more. If you want to chuck in your theories on things or you want to correct me, I'm all ears. If you want to say whatever you want about me, if you hate my voice or you hate everything, please actually send that comment. It drives a bit of engagement. But yeah, please don't be rude to other people commenting. Just be rude to me. I'm the one that's choosing to put myself out there. Nobody else is. They're just saying what's on their mind. So yeah, if you're gonna be rude to me. Don't be rude to other people. All right. Anyway, till next time.
Got him.